Hi, everyone, and welcome to a series of interviews for Open Conference. This year, Open Conference will be held at the 2nd and 3rd of December 2022 in Athens, and we will support also remote attendance apart from physical. Today with me, I have Andreas Erben, who is CTO for MR and Applied AI for daenet. Hi, Andreas, and welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
You have an impressive background in integrating backend
Mhm,
applications, VR projects, mixed reality, and AI.
mhm.
What triggered you to get involved with these technologies?
Oh, for me, it was somewhat of a natural growth or journey. So already in the 1990s, I played around with virtual reality in an academic field when it wasn't really cool yet to do those things. And so I really loved those technologies and I, I didn't publish anything, but it was more like still being a university student, basically. After that, I needed to earn some money and have a more regular career, so I started consulting enterprise type of customers. And in those situations, I one of the typical challenges was how do you integrate data coming from one system? They need to go into another system, and so I was always the plumber who kind of make sure that this happens in different roles, be it as a project manager, as a software developer, as an architect, as a specifications engineer. So this took many, many years. But around 2014, I started to rediscover my passion for innovation technologies and started playing around with the Kinect system. Have you heard about this for the Xbox, where you used to be
Of
able to do
course.
dance in front of the camera, but you can also do more serious things. For example, try to analyze somebody's posture or energy expenditure or do health applications. So my wife is a doctor, so I have a passion for healthcare, and then soon after I started playing around with that, I got a little signal that Microsoft may be coming out with something that should be more interesting. And true enough, then in 2015, I had the chance to start playing around with HoloLens, with one of
Mhm.
the
Okay.
first industrial mixed reality headsets. And from there, I started telling more interesting, let's say, stories to customers. When you are, let's say, an integration engineer and you talk about middleware technologies, you typically talk to a CIO persona, to someone who has to own the IT of a company, and and everything you talk about is very abstracted from real problems that people have to solve. But if you talk about mixed reality, suddenly you talk to someone who may be a production line engineer or who may be the chief medical officer or somebody who has actual underlying business problems to solve, rather than you being a function of making sure the business processes run smoothly. So this is what I really loved, and this is what has been my journey. And over time, I added more technology, started working with applied artificial intelligence. That means I'm not the guy who writes the next version of TensorFlow, but I will probably be the person who helps a company adopting different types of AI technologies. Yeah.
And it seems you really enjoy it.
Oh
You really
yeah,
like your job.
I'm having a lot of fun doing so. I like
Yeah.
doing new things, and and my challenge sometimes is that I'm sometimes a little bit ahead of the curve. So
Mhm.
from the business side of things, it's sometimes not easy when you talk about things and advocate for technologies that may only have breadth adoption years later on. So, but I have fun doing so.
You have a lot of experience, and as I heard before, you
Mhm,
have been in a lot of roles related to
mhm,
that. So, what advice would you give to a young engineer who would like to pave his own future in
mhm,
these categories, in virtual reality, in AI?
mhm, mhm. So I mean, that's a good question. So for me personally, it helped a lot that I had a good actual engineering foundation, that I had a solid training and in traditional computer science and math and all those things. That said, um, this underlying training never taught me to actually do things hands on. So I always was playing around with technology and exploring things. It's very easy these days. You have GitHub repositories for about any technology you can find. So for me, it's just let's do it, right? The latest technologies that are very disruptive are all those generative AI models like Stable Diffusion and so on. People just download them to the machine, start playing around with Python and making their own little scripts. So
Mhm.
um, that would be my advice. Like, just start playing around with something that seems fun to you and start to incorporate some software development into it, and things will hopefully happen naturally if that is your passion. Yeah. So
So you
uh,
propose a more self-driven way.
mhm. Yes, absolutely. I've personally rarely ever benefited from formal longer trainings. That's also a problem, that obviously attention span you have, right? If you Traditional trainings have been like 4 days, and then you're supposed to go home and know everything. But that's not how our human brain is really working, right?
Mhm.
So you may get information what's the starting points, like where do I look this up, or how does the technology feel like, or um, or and just to get a feel about how technology is. If you're more advanced in the technology already, you may get some best practices lessons and so on. And those lessons are, I think, better suited for a classroom environment than just aiming to teach someone in 4 or 5 days, let's say the basics of C# development or Python or Azure or whatnot. I think those are actually better suited for self-driven training, video training, or home-based lab training, so you can learn at your own pace. I mean, I think everybody has experienced that if you're in a classroom training, that suddenly you fall behind what the class is doing, and so some of your exercises doesn't work, and then you're stressed out and your learning suffers. So that's why I think that for classroom training, I think back practices type of maybe architecture patterns is good, but not traditional, let's learn, let's say, Python or C#. Yeah.
And is it something, an attribute maybe that you
Hmm.
have in order to continue to grow as a technology
Hmm.
advocate?
Hmm.
And tell us a few things about that. How do you keep up?
Well, one of the things I do actually, I challenge myself, and sometimes I speak at conferences, right? So, um, I mean, mixed reality is a technology that I happen to have been working with for a while now, but sometimes I submit talks to a conference that I know I want to learn it, I will learn it, I will learn it in time for the conference, and that's a driver who try to do something new when otherwise I would be stuck in my daily grind and stuck with just delivering my daily deliverables. And so that's a challenge I set myself. I think external challenges can help, and this could be, as I said, speaking at a conference. It doesn't need to be a conference. It can be local user group. It can be maybe you want to record a YouTube video, or if that's not your thing, you can just drive yourself by trying to apply a technology for something that matters to you, right? So build your own little demo, build your own little tool, and so on.
And that's inspiring for me
Mm,
also, not only for young
mm,
engineers. I'm also in the
mm,
field a lot of years, and I
mm,
find this very, very
mm.
inspiring to
Yeah.
continue to grow.
A specific example would be those topic of large language models, OpenAI, GPT-3. So this is a topic I only adopted or only started working with because I said, "Hey, this sounds interesting. Let's submit it to some conferences." And then
Mhm.
I started working with it. I mean, not full time, but I've been doing that now for little over a year, and I'm gathering more and more experience. And this will be one of the next, let's say, I wouldn't call it career steps, but it's one of the tools in my toolbox for the next generation computing. Mm,
Right.
mm,
In your short bio, you mentioned
mm,
that you got accepted into the ranks of the
mm,
Microsoft regional
mhm,
directors. Can
mhm.
you tell us a few things about that?
Okay. So so Microsoft has those programs where they recognize community advocacy, so and community leadership. What does it mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best engineer in the world, but it's that you contribute and give something back to society and put and appear to be a leader in your field.
You write
So
code.
they have the traditional program that's more technology in depth, where the MVP program, where you, let's say, you know Azure really well, and you become an Azure MVP because you may be blogging about it, you may be talking conferences about it, you may be writing books about it, and You have a specific consistency of doing so, and then they may recognize that. It's something you submit yourself for, or you get submitted by someone, or recommended for it. And then you have a regional director program, which is not technology in depth for one technology, but more broader leadership, industry leadership, in that sense. Let's say the future CTOs of companies and so on. And for that, you need to know more than one technology and have a better track record of understanding the bigger picture, but also the business side of things. So
Does
for me the path has been that I just have been presenting at a lot of conferences, and at one point, when you get involved into that ecosystem of other conference speakers and so on, then at one point I felt ready and I asked someone, "Hey, I think I'm ready for this. Can you submit me?" And then I went through that process, and you basically write up all the things you did, and you get accepted into it if you're lucky. I mean, it's not entirely luck, but yeah.
yes,
So,
understand.
and the key thing about those programs is that's something you do anyways, typically, because it's your passion. If you try to just, hey, I want to become a regional director or I want to become an MVP, that may be not the right approach, because even if you succeed, maybe you cannot sustain that. And the big benefits is just even a bigger integration into this overall technology community, at least on the Microsoft technology stack. Yeah.
Does this also involve contributing some way to Microsoft with
Um,
code, with
uh, that's a very good question. So first of all, it's those are unpaid positions, so nothing you do gets any financial compensation. You get some access, you get free Visual Studio and things like that. You get some Azure credits to play with and so on. Microsoft wants contributions, but it's not code, it's more feedback. So
okay.
you may be invited into some non-disclosure level of early engagements with them when they come out with a new technology, and there may be like an email list where you can submit questions to, but also answer questions and give feedback, what you think is going well, what you think is not going well. It's more those types of contributions to Microsoft itself. So,
Okay,
hmm
okay, that's actually great, and it's
hmm
good for you. Good for you.
it is.
Some more personal questions now, because
Mm-hmm.
we'd like to know you in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you balance work and life, or is it just work, work, work?
Mm. That's a good question. So I right now, my in this stage of my life, I have a very, let's say, unsteady rhythm. I would always say it. I have those situations where I'm very driven and hyper focused, and I think I self-diagnosed myself with adult ADHD. So I could be that I'm only doing work, work, work for a few days, and because I'm really, really driven by something, and then I may binge on Netflix for the next 2 days and so on, because I work from home mostly, so I follow my wife around the world. She is a surgeon and she needs to be where the hospital is. So I've been working remotely for quite some years. And of course, there's meetings online and all those things. So I have been very used to the online or remote pattern even before the pandemic. And it suits the style that I like to work in. Can I
Yes.
work in an office? Of course, I can work in an office, and one of the biggest things I miss is interaction with other people and the daily chatter to see what's going on. And sometimes I need other people sometimes to motivate myself also. So that's one of the challenges. But in general, the work 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 can happen, but the play can also happen. And uh,
I hope not on Thanksgiving Day as well,
um,
apart
yeah,
from this interview.
Yeah, that's part of what I enjoy. I would say if you ask me about my hobbies, it's like traveling and engaging community is definitely one of my hobbies that I like to do.
To you in
Mhm,
your upcoming speech in Open Conference on
mhm,
Saturday, you will be talking about Metaverse. So could you
mhm,
give us a small teaser about that?
mhm. Well, the first question is, what is even that metaverse that everybody's talking about? If you ask someone what day is today, it's November 2022. Nobody heard about the metaverse other than some science fiction people who read Snow Crash. So, and that's what I want to. My talk will start first of all talking about the metaverse, what the metaverse is, what it maybe is not. And the fact of the matter is that all the industry companies, they have the same challenge. Everybody tries to define for themselves what metaverse means, and a lot of them try to define for others what metaverse should mean. So a lot of companies you see renaming things they have been doing for years, let's say Internet of Things, and they just say, oh, this is the metaverse now. Some people say, hey, we're doing crypto, we're doing Bitcoin, so metaverse must be something with Bitcoin. So that's why it will first of all frame a little bit what the metaverse is and what maybe it is not. And in this stage of this hype cycle, which some people say it's already getting some disappointment, I think it's important to set a few foundations about some aspects of the metaverse. So that's why I called it also sometimes foundation of the metaverse. And specifically, I want to talk about what does it mean to interact with three-dimensional space in some sense. So there are some technologies which is called spatial anchors, and different companies call this different ways. Some call it visual positioning system, but overall it means like you want to remember the location of a real object so you can find it again later on. And this is important in this context of a more persistent metaverse. And the other aspect is, let's say you want to interact with real three-dimensional space. How is that done? How do you put, as a software developer, let's say that virtual object on the real kitchen table? How do you do that? So, and that's the other part of the more technical part of the talk. And then I will talk about mention a few more cloud services that developers can use for specific scenarios.
Okay, that
Mhm,
sounds great, and I
mhm.
really look forward to it.
And by the way, the goal of this talk, there will be some code in it, but I specifically did not make it so that it's only accessible for developers. It should also be accessible for non-developers. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Mhm,
That's great.
mhm,
Okay, so that's all from my side. Thank you
mhm.
again for coming. And you will come here in Greece next week. So we
Yes.
all expect you.
Oh,
And for all of you, see you at Open Conference. Thank you
and
very
I'm very excited about that. As I said, I love traveling, so looking forward to
much.
seeing all of you. And do not hesitate to chat me up and to ask me questions, or if you want to meet outside of the conference while I'm there, happy to do that. I'm easy to find. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much.